Welcome to You Decide. I'm your host, Errol Lewis. We are making a pivot here on the big podcast. You can still find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever audio platform you prefer. But You Decide is also now on YouTube. And that comes with a video feed for those who like to see the look on people's faces while we are talking. I'm making faces right now. You can't see it unless you go to YouTube. The address is youtube.com/@NY1 Podcast. And we are asking everybody to check it out. We want you to like it. We want you to subscribe. We want you to leave a comment. We want you to tell your friends and coworkers to check it out as well. So let's get to it. We are quickly approaching the June 24th Democratic primary for mayor. By the time you hear this, we'll be past the 30-day mark. And with early voting, we're talking more like 20 days. The pace is picking up. A lot of the candidates are getting their matching funds from the Campaign Finance Board. They are buying ads, including on New York One, by the way. Lots of ads coming out now. One of the candidates I'm talking to today is Zellnor Myrie. He's been a state senator representing the 20th District in Brooklyn since 2019. The district includes all or part of Crown Heights, East Flatbush, Park Slope, Prospect Heights, Prospect, Lefferts Gardens, and Windsor Terrace. I happen to live in this district, so Mr. Myrie is my senator. And it's worth noting this is the same district once represented by a guy named Eric Adams. Zellnor Myrie, born and raised in Brooklyn. He's an attorney. He graduated from Brooklyn Tech and then Fordham University and then law school at Cornell. He has been an advocate for affordable housing. He has pushed for efforts to protect tenants and homeowners. And some of his policy proposals, if he should become the next mayor of New York, is to build 1 million homes in New York City, shifting the emphasis from luxury condos to affordable homes, increasing the staffing of the NYPD and prioritizing safety in the transit system, creating after-school programs for all, and universal summer youth employment. A lot more on his website, but he's here now to talk all about it. Thanks for coming in. Great to see you.
I'm excited to be here and especially excited that we're up on video.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, take this and propagate it. You young people with your internets. You've done a bunch of forums. You've done press conferences, fundraisers, the whole 9 yards. It's much different from running in a Senate district, isn't it?
It's exciting. I'm born and raised in this city. So I, of course, have my own lived experience from being born and raised here. But running for mayor is orders of magnitude higher than running for state senate. And it's been really fun. You get to travel around the city. You get to hear from a lot of folks, different perspectives, but in many ways, a lot of the same concerns and a lot of the same issues. And so it's been an exciting journey, one that I'm looking forward to continuing to put our vision out on, and let's keep going until Election Day.
Talk about affordability. From the top of the income scale all the way to the bottom, the billionaires are complaining about their taxes. The millionaires are complaining about their taxes. The working class are talking about their expenses. Everybody's got an affordability issue at this point.
Let me be very clear. If you're a millionaire or a billionaire, you're doing okay in this city. You're not struggling. It is the working class people of this city that are having a hard time, and that's not just campaign rhetoric or hyperbole. The numbers say that. The folks who have left this city, we had in 2023, we had 78,000 New Yorkers that have left. They have been middle and low income New Yorkers, and that is mostly a function of the cost of living. The rent is still too damn high. People can't afford childcare, and we have to do something about this. This has consequences for the city, not just individually, but for all of the things that we care about, the services that we want to provide. If people leave the city, we have less tax revenue. If it is not an attractive place, we have less tax revenue. And less revenue prevents us from doing things like universal after school and providing the services we know people need.
Do you think of the mayoralty right now as a vacant seat? Is this about removing Eric Adams, or are you assuming that was going to happen anyway?
Look, I entered this race in May of last year. I opened an account to explore the run. We made it official in December. But back in May of last year, there was no federal indictment. There was no Donald Trump presidency. Many of the candidates that are in this race now were not in that race. And I had, at that moment, knew that the city was going in a wrong direction. There were a lot of things that happened since then. The race has changed significantly, and I think that New Yorkers are frankly fed up with what they've seen out of this current administration and what they may be seeing from some other candidates going forward.
What was the deal breaker for you last May that made you decide you wanted to run?
Well, I first wanted to talk to New Yorkers and see whether or not we could do this, whether we could get the resources, whether this was our time to step up and lead in this moment. And what I had heard constantly from my constituents was that they were fed up with the direction that the city was going in. People felt less safe on the streets and the subways, and this was a mayor that ran on making both of those things safer. Our affordability crisis was only getting worse. The same working class voters that Mayor Adams had went to were feeling the pinch and were frustrated. And then, of course, the distractions started to heap up. And I said, listen, I have been a product of our public schools. I had very famously Mrs. Randolph now invest in me when I was in middle school. I was a product of the Crown Heights Youth Collective. This city has made me who I am today. My parents came here for opportunity. Both of them worked in factories when they got here. That is what attracts people to this city, but that opportunity is slipping away, and I decided I wanted to step up to provide that for every New Yorker.
Well, one of the candidates, I don't know if it was you, there's a lot of you folks, and I lose track of you sometimes, but at least one of the candidates has been saying that Andrew Cuomo is running for Eric Adams' second term. Do you see it that way?
I think that New Yorkers are tired of the distraction and the scandal, and that is exactly what Cuomo has been and what he would be as mayor. I worked with Andrew Cuomo as a state legislator. I was there when he proposed cutting funding to the only state-run hospital in the city. I was there when he cut funding to our Department of Education. The time that he was governor, he cut rental assistance and we saw homelessness go up. He has been bad for New York City. And by the way, in his dealings with the previous mayor, put out petty grievances that hurt this city, took money from the MTA. And so I think it is really important that we remind New Yorkers of what his record is. Run on the record. That's what people expect us to do. Let's be honest about that conversation. And listen, we mentioned that we have been to so many forums, Errol, I can't even count how many. Andrew Cuomo has been running scared. He has not showed up to these forums. He has not had unscripted moments with New Yorkers or the press. How in the world are you going to stand up to Donald Trump if you can't even face everyday New Yorkers? We're tired of this. We want a real leader.
Well, why is it that the problems with Cuomo while he was governor weren't talked about before? I mean, there's a specific case I want to spend some time on regarding Downstate Hospital, but there are a lot of other issues, supportive housing, funding for transit, and so forth, where now we're hearing a lot of complaints. Hey, he wasn't that great of a governor. And I'm thinking, where were you 4 years ago? Where were you 5 years ago?
Look, I got the same question, Errol. You know, I have been someone that stood up to him when he was hurting our community. And I was asking in those moments, where is everybody else? People were operating in fear. People were operating in political ambition. And I'd argue that there's some of that happening right now on this campaign. People unwilling to stand up to him and unwilling to confront his record. This is the type of politics that I think New Yorkers are really frustrated by. You have people that come before you every 2 years or every 4 years, and they say, give me the opportunity to lead you and provide for you. And then they get in office, and it's fully about themselves. It's fully about what is good for them politically. And they operated, the Cuomo administration, out of fear, and they played on that ambition. There were other elected leaders who, because they wanted to be somebody, because they wanted to be in the good graces of Andrew Cuomo, they didn't speak up. I was not one of those people, and I don't plan to be that as the mayor.
In my memory, I got to know you during the pandemic when everything was shut down. Things were pretty frightening. Everybody was working from home. And then Downstate Hospital, a state facility, was turned into a COVID-only facility by the governor, Andrew Cuomo. Downstate, for listeners who don't know, it's built to handle 60,000 visits a year. It typically gets more than 200,000. So on a good day, pre-pandemic, it was overburdened and underfunded. Years of underfunding led to really creaky, really stressed out systems. And when they made it a COVID-only facility, things were so bad that I remember the medical staff started a GoFundMe page to try and scrounge up protective gear, which I thought was shameful. And you and I sort of talked offline about that. And, you know, the question we kept kicking back and forth was, where is everybody? You know, like I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and we're like, nobody else sees this happening. What the heck is going on here? And it turns out that Downstate is where you were born.
So I was actually born at Interfaith. I was born at Interfaith, which is another safety net hospital in Crown Heights.
Brooklyn Jewish? Down the street? Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's down the street from my house.
Yes.
Okay.
So I am someone who is speaking about this from actual experience. I was in SUNY downstate when I got COVID, and I was in that ICU. I didn't go to a fancy hospital somewhere else. I was right in my community. That is where I get my care. And I want to spend some time on this because this really pisses me off. That we could have someone come to our churches, come sit in our pews, stand up at our pulpits, and talk about what they're going to do. But when we needed him the most, he proposed cutting money from downstate. Designated it a COVID-only hospital, all of the things that you just mentioned, hurt its revenue stream, didn't help it build back reputation in community, and then said, we want to cut over $100 million. I voted no on that budget for that specific reason. You want to talk about where people were? I stood up and said, there's no way that I am voting for a budget that cuts money to this hospital. Our healthcare professionals were wearing garbage bags, Errol. Garbage bags. And he was parading around on TV every single day, got a $5 million book deal. People got to check the record. And we got to stop giving people a pass to come into our community who didn't show up for us when we needed it the most. So that's what I've been trying to talk about on the trail. I'm trying to remind folks, I understand why there might be some instinct to vote for him because you have seen him and he's been in political office for a long time. But look at what he did when he had the power to help you. And more importantly, look at what he did not do.
What are the other candidates saying?
I think that there has been a broad consensus that his record needs to be highlighted. I think that they have, made some pointed attacks on other things. I frankly have been paying more attention to what I've been hearing from voters on what they think the next mayor is going to have the ability to do. And if you were someone that cares about someone standing up for you, not the donors, not the billionaires, not the millionaires, but standing up for you, then look at Cuomo's record and see what he did. He stood up for his donors. He cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires instead of putting money into rental assistance and putting money into our hospitals. That has not been the leader that I have been in my community. And that is why I think we need to turn the page. And let me just be honest, man. Look, we're on a podcast, on a YouTube. Running for mayor, there are a lot of things that are exhausting. There are a lot of things that are challenging. There are a lot of things that you wish you didn't have to do. But one of the things that I have really appreciated about this process is that I have been able to point to my record. I've been able to point to my record. I'm not telling you about the things that I want to do because I've created this in some laboratory or some campaign or I poll tested this. I'm talking to you about the stuff that I've done. So let's talk about the record and let's talk about his record.
Okay. I definitely want to talk about your record. Let me just round out the downstate conversation, though, because even when the pandemic subsided, we heard that even after Andrew Cuomo had left office, that the next governor, Kathy Hochul, was going to close downstate. And I remember, called you up again, called my state senator. We're like, what? Yep. How can we do this? We're underserved. In this community, there's more maternal health challenges, there's more public health challenges, more mental health challenges. This is the only state hospital, and now they're talking about closing it. And so you came up with some more money since we're talking about records.
Yep.
What's the status of the hospital now? I mean, are we going to have to go through this every few years?
So we did two things. We came up with some more money to keep it going, but we also wrote a bill that would create a community advisory board that would determine what the future of downstate would be, to have a fiscally responsible plan to help it survive and thrive in this community. We are in the midst of that advisory board right now. They are supposedly going to present us, the legislature, with recommendations on what that should look like. I've had criticisms on this process. The reason why we instituted this in the first place was to have the community have a voice, to have them be transparent about how they were thinking and arriving at this. There have been some public meetings, but we have not seen how the decision-making is going to go. We don't know how the voting is going to go. We don't know what material they are considering. And so I have questions about this process, but they are supposed to report before June on what the recommendations are, and then the legislature has to fight for it. So let's see. Stay tuned.
Who's chairing that board?
So the SUNY chancellor is on that board, along with the commissioner of the Department of Health. And there were several appointees that the governor would make. I had an appointee. The assembly had an appointee. And they have been collaborating for close to 6 months. We passed that bill in April of last year, and they did not convene this commission until December. And so they lost 6 months. So I have questions. We may very well be back in a fight, and I'm not the one to play with.
No, for sure. Well, if you win this election and you get sworn in as mayor, you'll be in charge of 11 public hospitals. What has the downstate experience taught you, and what would you do with our public hospital system?
There's been this philosophy in the conversation around downstate that it has been a not profitable operation. And this is a philosophy that I reject for our safety net hospitals. They're not meant to make money. They are serving our most vulnerable. They rely almost exclusively on Medicaid reimbursements. Our Health and Hospital Corporation is similar. Our public hospitals rely on that Medicaid reimbursement. They are not meant to be profitable, but they are meant to service people, and it doesn't mean that they should not provide high-quality health care. So I intend to provide that same energy and attention to detail in leading our hospital system, have us be a center of innovation, make sure that we are attacking the issues that are most prominent in those vulnerable communities. I want more maternal health centers. I want more attention on preventative care. I want to ensure that people with disabilities are getting the support that they need, and also the workers that are on the front line. We still have not grappled with what our healthcare professionals went through during the COVID crisis. They lost colleagues, people that they stood on the floor with. They right now are under duress because they are understaffed. We got to ensure that those new contracts that are coming up, that they are done in a way that gives them justice, that gives them the appropriate wages, and allows for them to do the work that they signed up to do.
Okay. You mentioned your parents from Costa Rica. What brought them here?
So my dad could make more as a minimum wage factory worker in Brooklyn than he could back home with a college degree. He was looking for work. My mom, she came here on a promise of a mattress. She had $40 in her pocket, and she was going to make some money, and then she was going to go back home. They, of course, then had me in a very New York City way. They met at a party, and so then ended up having me, sending me to public schools, and we were here today.
Is there a sizable community here from Costa Rica?
There is, and I grew up in central Brooklyn, affectionately known in some parts as Little Caribbean, and my parents are from the Caribbean portion of Costa Rica. In fact, my grandparents on both sides, one of them, maternal, paternal, are from Jamaica. Myrie is a Jamaican surname, and the history there is very interesting. When the British Empire abolished slavery, the formerly enslaved Jamaicans made their way to Costa Rica to help build a railroad across the country. And they went and they never left. That has been the source of Caribbeans in Costa Rica. So I grew up listening to soca and salsa, and we have, a special connection with both the Caribbean community and the Latino community here in New York City.
Okay, ¿por qué no habla español en público, señor?
My Spanish is my Spanish is on a little bit of life support, but I've been trying to practice more publicly. I understand it fluently. Many your children of immigrants can empathize with this story of your parents speaking to you in Spanish and you responding in English.
Yes.
And that is part of my story.
Okay, fair enough. Stand by. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more from Senator Zellnor Myrie, but we will keep it going on YouTube. Another reason to check out YouTube. No commercials. Okay, you are making the biggest housing promise out of all of the candidates. Mayors Bloomberg and de Blasio and Adams all shot for 200,000, 300,000 units over the course of a decade. You're saying that the city can move faster. How would you do that?
So I want to deliver 1 million homes over the next 10 years. I want 700,000 of that to be new units and another 300,000 of preservation of our current housing stock. We can do 70,000 a year, not because that's some number that I just came up with. We used to do it in the 1930s. We built the Empire State Building in 13 months, 100 years ago. So it's not that we are incapable. It is that we need the courage and the leadership to get it done. Right now, that number is close to 20 to 30,000. I think we have room to do a lot more. And there are a couple of components here. One, we have to speed up our commercial real estate conversion to residential. We have some of the tools to do that now. We need some upzoning in places that are already dense to get that moving. It's also really difficult in the city to build 7 stories and below. There is a lot of bureaucracy. And if you're a smaller developer, you don't have the same access to capital. I want to change that. I want our Housing Development Corporation to serve as a backstop and also to incentivize the private market to do lending. We do this on the federal level in the Small Business Administration. I think we can do the same thing here. We have industrial areas in this city that are sandwiched in between residential areas. They no longer serve that industry's purpose. We can convert that to residential. And I think in our public housing stock, we have a lot of land that can be utilized in conjunction with our NYCHA residents, not displacing a single tenant, but building some mixed income so that people can have opportunity to mix in the community. I think that we can get this done, but I'm under no illusion. It's not going to be easy. I know it's going to be hard, but it's worth it because the alternative is if we do not build and if we do not do it quickly and everywhere, people are going to leave the city. We're going to continue to see outmigration. And that's not a future that any of us want.
What is your sense of if you got $1 million built over the course of the next 10 years, what would happen to rents? Would they actually drop? Would they stabilize? What would happen?
So the rents would drop. And this is in part a simple economics equation of adding more supply to bring down the demand. We saw some of this over COVID when there was an exodus from the city and where property owners were trying to compete for renters. That is the dynamic that I'd like to see. Instead of renters competing to get to a landlord, it should be the other way around and have them fighting for renters and trying to incentivize them to come. I want to bring rents down, but it's going to require us to build a lot more. And here's the thing. The opposition that is faced with development is not something I'm unfamiliar with. I've had it in my own district where on the side of Prospect Park in my district where I grew up, we've seen over the past 10 years close to 4,000 units developed. But on the other side of the park in neighborhoods like Windsor Terrace, that number is closer to 300. So when there was a proposed development in Windsor Terrace, I came out in full support. And I had emails and calls, very New York, colorful language.
This is the Errol linen?
The Errol linen,
yeah.
Where people saying, you can't step foot in Windsor Terrace if you support this development. And I said, first of all, I'm from Brooklyn, so I'm going to step wherever I please. But also, I think it was emblematic of what the resistance can be. So some people said, well, Z, are you prepared to have entire communities hate you? So... Yeah. The job is to do what is best for the entire city. Sure. And I'm prepared to do that.
Okay. So, the Errol Linen project, for listeners who don't know about it, it's a really interesting part of the city. I actually put my son in the car, drove him over there, and we went and looked around and took pictures and stuff. He's an urban planning major at Cornell, as a matter of fact. Okay. And I was like, you're going to love this one. Because it's a great neighborhood. Yep. It's a great mixed-use neighborhood, wonderful little Italian bakery. We went and bought some cookies and stuff like that, and we're kind of looking around. But then we looked at the site of the industrial laundry, which is mostly a big parking lot and a little bit of industrial space. And the developers wanted to turn it into much needed housing. There's subway lines. There's it's got everything you need. It's got everything you need. And people who say we can't put one more person in this neighborhood, but we somehow expect rent prices to stabilize or come down. That's just not reality, right?
It's not reality. And I can be empathetic to pockets of New York that have been subject to a lot of development very quickly, where people have seen shiny towers go up, but they can't afford to get into it. I understand why hearing this message that we got to do more building doesn't feel real to you. But the truth is that we can't overburden one neighborhood. We got to do it everywhere. And that's what's going to help us drive the cost of rent down. That is what my intention is on this plan.
So now, real talk for you. Yep. Your salary, I don't even know what it is right now, but it is public, so you can say what it is, right?
Yeah, but I think it's 140.
140, 142?
Yeah, 140.
It's less than 148, which is the city council salary, right?
Yeah.
And can you buy in your district, in your neighborhood?
So so I was literally born in Crown Heights. I went to elementary school in Crown Heights, and the average cost of a home is close to $900,000. Yeah. Across the city, that number is $860,000. There are places on the block that I grew up that are $1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million, completely out of reach. Right. And that, to me, is really emblematic of what the affordability crisis looks like. Because even for folks that are doing relatively okay, it is really difficult to imagine yourself being on a path to home ownership.
Yeah. Because even in a case like that, even, a 5% down payment, like you don't happen to have 50 grand laying around.
I don't.
Yeah. Let's talk about public safety. Your plan includes hiring more cops. I think every one of the candidates start with the premise that we need to hire more cops. Why is that?
Well, we saw pre-pandemic in 2018, the last time our police count was closer to 36,000, that we had some of the lowest crime rates in the city's history. I will also point out that we saw some of the lower rates of stop and frisk. And so there is this notion that these two things cannot coexist, that you cannot hold police accountable while increasing the police headcount. And I disagree with that premise. I take the subway every day. Took the subway here. I've been taking the bus and the trains my whole life. My first time on the bus was the B43 on Empire Boulevard. And I remember being so proud of myself getting on that bus. I thought I was taking the bus alone. My mom would tell me years later she was driving behind the bus. Love it. To make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
But I say that to say I'm a commuter through and through, and things feel different. They feel different on our subways and on our streets. And my mom is someone who was robbed at gunpoint when I was very young, and we were both together in an elevator. Her worldview was informed by that experience. I'm also someone that got pepper sprayed.
I saw the footage of that. I remember that right outside the Barclays Center. Yeah.
That's right. And I went through the Civilian Complaint Review Board process. There was no vindication there. They found no fault. Had to sue in federal court. So I think New Yorkers can hold both of these experiences together, that police officers are a necessary component of our public safety ecosystem, but that we don't want them stepping over the line and we can hold them accountable. So I've proposed a return to that police headcount pre-pandemic, but I also have proposed that we increase the resources for the CCRB so that they can have what they need in order to hold police officers accountable. And we got to invest in crime prevention as well. I've proposed 50,000 more summer youth employment slots. My first job ever was SYEP. And we often tell our kids, all right, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then we don't give them a thing to do.
Right.
So I want to ensure that it is a truly universal program, increase that number to 150,000 slots total so that no young person is on the waiting list during the summer.
What happened to your lawsuit against the NYPD?
So it was settled.
Okay, well, there's your down payment, brother. Get you some land. I mean, real talk here. Real talk here on the podcast, man. How would you deal with the issue of seriously mentally ill people on the streets and subways? They're not getting the care that they need. In your mind, is that a public safety issue that requires police involvement?
It is a public safety issue, and I think that it requires both police and clinicians. That is what I have proposed. Police and clinician trios to be in our subways and in our streets 24/7. I heard a senior police official say this who worked in our city in the 80s. He said, when something happens to you in the subway, it feels 10 times worse than above ground because there's no other place to go. You were moving in a confined space. And so paying special attention to what happens in those spaces is worthy of government effort. So what I'd like to do is to have police and clinicians together because police officers can't do this job alone. I want to have a clinician paired with them so that they can diagnose individuals who are going through a crisis and then get them on a real path to recovery. We have between 2,000 and 2,500 chronically mentally ill people in this city. It is not a large number. It's still an unfortunate number, but it is not a large number. Many of our city agencies know who they are.
Sure.
They deal with them. But it's a alphabet soup of agencies that deal with them that do not coordinate and help get them the help that they need. So I want to consolidate that jurisdiction under one deputy mayor, and I want to include our housing department under that deputy mayor so that we can work in tandem. If you have already agreed that you need the help, you need the support, you want to get into permanent and supportive housing, and the city has those vacancies right now, New Yorkers have to ask themselves, why aren't people being connected? Right now, that number is close to 1,000. of people who know that they need the help have been identified, and the vacancies exist. So I want to change that dynamic. I also want stabilization centers in every borough. For some people, all they need is a shower, some new clothes, and to get back on their medication. For others, they need a longer-term diagnosis, longer-term help, and I want to base it off of the clubhouse model that we've seen in some places in the city that have people who have been through this crisis, who are on the path to recovery, giving people some agency. This is really, really important. We are in the midst of not just with chronic mental health illness, but generally mental health. I always like to say in my public spaces that I'm in therapy, that I need therapy. I would not be a good leader, a good husband without that. And I encourage everyone who can to do so. But our chronically mentally ill in the city, they deserve some special attention because we can't have them posing a risk to themselves or posing a risk to the public.
That's very interesting. You know, I've been doing this for over 40 years. You might be the third, maybe fourth official I've ever talked to who said that they were in therapy. So, you know.
It's important. And you know, Errol, in our communities, it's particularly important because we don't talk about this. Yeah. And we usually just suffer in silence. And the posture is you just got to eat that and go through and no,
right.
We need help. We need help, and it's good, and it's a good thing to say.
Right on. Now, you came in, you got elected in 2018. You were in the class of 2018, a group of newcomers who beat a bunch of incumbents, right? Everybody remembers Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but there were a lot of you folks at the state level. I remember people bouncing around here with the word swagger's been a little discredited in New York politics, but you all came in and, you know, and a lot of you ran as a team in a way, right? Talk about that race and what that year meant in New York politics.
You know, this is a really underreported chapter in New York's history because what we had seen for a long time was in the upper house of the state legislature, in the state Senate, the Republicans had maintained control for the better part of a century. And this was enabled in some ways by a series of governors, the last of which was Andrew Cuomo. And what happened was there were Democrats who were elected as Democrats who then went up to Albany and were caucusing with the Republicans. And so even though Democrats were in the numerical majority in the state Senate, there were more Democratic senators than Republicans, they formed an independent Democratic caucus that gave that majority to the Republicans and prevented a lot of the things that New Yorkers care about from ever seeing the light of day. Tenant protections, climate legislation, reproductive health legislation, killed all of that. So in 2018, we are now 2 years removed from the first Donald Trump election, and New Yorkers start paying attention to what's happening here locally. And my state senator at the time was one of those Democrats, elected as a Democrat, caucusing with the Republicans, and we ran against him. And everyone said, you can't win. This is Eric Adams's protege. They've been in office for so long. You're not going to have a shot. It's a long shot, yada, yada, yada. And we won. We won. And immediately we got to work and started passing a lot of those things that we mentioned has had a major, major impact on the life of everyday New Yorkers.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I bring this up, in fact, because you, Jessica Ramos, also class of 2018, both running for mayor. Zohran Mamdani gets elected 2 years later. A lot of the same kind of energy. Are we seeing a generational shift here?
I think there should be a generational shift. What has been unfortunate, I think, in our party is that there have been a resistance to young leadership. And there has been a wait your turn attitude to say, well, all of these ideas and energy, that's nice and that is cute, but you got to pay your dues the way that we had to pay our dues. And in the interim, people can't afford the city. People don't have good health care. So I think this is a real moment for us, not just as a city, but as a party to do some introspection and to say what the old guys have been doing got us to where we are right now. Sure. We are here because of that. Yeah. So let's turn the page. We saw what happened in 2018. We were able to bring some new energy. I think we can do the same thing on the local level as well.
Yeah. I mean, and there were a number of reforms, I remember, because you were, in the election committee. And, we got early voting. We got, registration up to 10 days before the actual primary. A lot of reforms right off the bat.
Right off the bat. Literally my first day on the job, Errol, we passed early voting. I will never forget this day. Obviously, it was the first first time I'm walking into the Senate chamber. I remember, in fact, one of the sergeant at arms said, "Where are you going?" And didn't really he thought I was like a staffer because they had not seen this type of youthful energy in the chamber. But I debated the Republicans for over an hour and got early voting through. And as chair of the Elections Committee over the 6 years that I've been in the state Senate, we made over 100 changes to the election law, including some of what you mentioned, but a lot of the minutia and the things that aren't sexy, but that are important to keeping our democracy functioning.
Okay. Well, look, best of luck. We will see you out on the campaign trail. And what's your path to victory? What do you think? What's your best case scenario between now and June 24th?
Well, we just got on TV a few weeks ago, and we've been running ads, as you mentioned.
My wife likes the ad of you with your old elementary school teacher?
Yeah, so she was both elementary and middle school, Mrs. Randolph, who is incredible, the real star of the TV ad. And I think voters are just starting to tune in. They're just starting to pay attention. I've been hitting multiple churches on Saturdays and Sundays. I've been in community centers. I've been all across the city. And I think we've laid the right foundation. I've raised enough money to get our message out to the voters. And I'm excited about what is upcoming. We got some debates that you will be participating in.
Yes.
There's going to be, I think, some real excitement once we start getting closer to Election Day. So I'm going to keep talking to folks about why I'm going to be the best mayor in this election.
All right. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming in. Do you want more conversations with the people who are shaping the future of New York City and beyond? Check out our New York One podcast channel in the description. And hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues.